Bible today. Our reading comes from the first three chapters, roughly the first three chapters, almost all of chapter 3, chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Deuteronomy. That's the Latin name. Maybe you're familiar that it means second law, which really it's not a second law. In Hebrew, the name of the book is Devarim, which comes from the first several words of the portion, which said that these are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel as they were crossing over the Jordan in the wilderness. So that's where we get Devarim from. And it's not a second law, but really what we've got here is a second telling, more or less. Really kind of a rehearsing of what has gone on with the nation up until this point in their history, certainly from the Exodus. It's a recounting of everything, the ups and the downs and the in-betweens. And some of us, I know people personally, but some of us really hate to hear about the past, you know. We consider it to be a useless kind of rehearsing, or really a useless rehashing. You know, why do you have to go over that kind of stuff again? You know, you should just forget what's behind and press on toward the mark, right? That's what Paul, Rabbi Shaul tells us, right? So we don't like that useless, kind of stuff. And it's true that we should not dwell in the past or dwell or rehash just for rehearsing's sake or for nostalgia and that kind of thing. That is true. But it is beneficial to rehearse our past, not rehash, but rehearse in terms of our failures, in terms of our successes, and most importantly, as we see in Devarim, taking stock of where God has brought us, what He's brought us from, and what He has brought us through. Doing that kind of rehearsing certainly is worthy of your time. And that was really the function of these the function of these first several chapters of Deuteronomy. Moses letting the people know that, yes, it's time to move on and to possess what God has given us. But first, let's take stock of what's happened up to this point. And he tells them, he says, look, you guys, you're numerous, and you're going to be even more numerous than you are now. And that's all because of God. God has equipped you for what lays ahead. He has set up certain things within your community. He's organized the community with an organizational structure, a very detailed one that's beneficial for you, one that makes more sense, one that's beneficial for the entire community. And that too, that's because of God and what He's done, because of His forethought, because of His desire to prepare you to be successful, and His desire to prepare you to be good representatives of Him as you enter this land, good representatives to the nations, because this has always been a worldwide effort by God to make Himself known. But then Moses kind of brings up the low part. He says, right when you were on the brink to receive the blessing and the promises from God, you doubted. He says, you took matters into your own hands. What did you do exactly? Well, what was your downfall? What was it that God, was upset with that caused Him to say, look, all your ancestors, everybody that's here today, basically, other than the kids, are going to die out, and it's going to postpone the plans. What was it? What were these things that He did? It has a lot, I think, what it was has a lot to do with us even to this day. And what that is we see God's gift, we know it, we hear His voice, but we stop and we do what the children of Israel here did, and we evaluate things with our own eyes. We measure the possibilities. We measure these promises that God has given us. We measure them against our own abilities, and we decide whether or not it really seems something that's realistic to us or not. It's the yeah, God, thank you very much, but I'll take it from here mentality. And it was deadly to ancient Israel, and it's deadly to us today as well. The people, they were understandably concerned for their own welfare as well as the welfare of their families. They were worried that their children would become spoil for the enemies and so forth, so they talk about all these things. But in typical fashion, we see that God did then what he still does today, and he turned the whole thing on its head, really. And their children, in fact, did not become spoil for the enemies, or the enemy. In fact, their children would be the ones that would enter the promised land, while their parents, the ones who doubted, were going to die out. And moreover, even the parents, would in fact see God's mercy, even in spite of this. This kind of speaks to the overall mercy of God, because they wouldn't become spoil for the enemy. They just were going to simply die out their natural way in the wilderness. And chapter 2 even tells us that in all of Israel's wilderness wanderings, God still provided for them, even in the midst of their rebellion. In chapter 2, verse 7, it says, "For Adonai your God has blessed you in all the work of your hand. He has known your wanderings through this great wilderness. These 40 years, Adonai your God has been with you. You have lacked nothing." And it's important, again, so it's important to rehearse and not forget all of the things, even the little things that God provides you with, especially during those times when, all we seem to be focused on are the things that we don't have. The fact is, there's a lot that we do have, and a lot of the little things that we're not recognizing him for. And the Parashah closes out with what I see as a very powerful message, one that is good for each of us to take to heart even today. Right at the last several verses of chapter 3, verses 21 to 22, say this. It says, "I commanded Joshua at that time, saying, 'Your eyes have seen all that Adonai your God has done to these two kings,'" these kings that they were going to dispossess and take the land from. It says, "Adonai will do the same to all the kingdoms you are about to cross into. You must not fear them." And why not? Well, is it because, don't fear them because you can do it, I've given you guys all kinds of great skill and ability and so forth. No, the text says that you are about to cross into, you must not fear them, for it is Adonai your God who fights for you. And, a few verses earlier, God did say, this is getting ready to go down, and, ready yourself for battle. You're going to cross over all the men of valor and so forth. So in other words, this is one of those tension pieces that we often see in Scripture, not inconsistencies, but tension. And the idea being that, there is some responsibility on your part, even when God is getting ready to give you something. There is a necessary tension. You ready yourself. But you will be victorious, not because you ready yourself, or not even because God necessarily blesses you with all this skill and so forth, but it will be because it is Adonai your God who fights for you. That's the message, I think, that is very good for us at the end of this chapter here. Now I'm going to be reading from chapter 1, verses 29 to 31. It's on the blue sheet in your bulletin. And it says this, "Then I said to you, don't tremble or be afraid of them. Adonai your God who goes before you, he himself will fight for you." Same message that we read at the end as well. "Just as he did for you in Egypt before your own eyes, and in the wilderness, where you saw how Adonai your God carried you as a man carries his son, everywhere you went until you came to this place." This is the piece that caught my attention, why I wanted to read from this today, this idea that God carried you as a man carries his son. How does someone carry a child? You ever carried a child before? Maybe it's been a while. Think about carrying a child for a moment. On the one hand, you might think, you carry a child because they're walking slow and there's rough terrain and you got to get over, and sometimes it's burdensome and so forth. You're carrying this kid, come on, I don't want to drag you, so I pick you up and I carry you. It's kind of a necessity type of thing, very functional, right? But I don't think that's what's being discussed here, and I see it as much more than that. Think about what it means to carry a child. Again, at the beginning, it's a place of comfort and security for the child. But it's also, it's a very nice feeling for the person carrying the child, isn't it? If you've ever carried a child before, talking about, when you have kids and you have little kids, people come up, when they're a day old, can I hold the baby? Can I hold the child? Can they want to carry even little kids? Can I hold her? Can I hold her? Kids always, I'm not going to let you drop my kid and so forth, but they always want to carry the kid and so forth. It's a very special thing. It's a very special feeling. And why is that? It's because, you hold the child and the child holds on to you. They got their hands on your neck or whatever. And it's functional, yes, but beyond that, carrying a child is a joy. and it's fun. And not the least of all, it's a comfort to the child. And that's the comfort. I think that's the picture here of the verses, that, at least for me, that I'm reading. This is the comfort that God gives to his children. Very functional, yes, but also a very personal thing to carry someone like they would carry a child. This is not like the fireman's rescue carry that's, just getting them out of danger kind of. This is the way someone carries a child, right? It's a very personal and special thing. And so again, that's the comfort that God gives to his children and that he rehearses here. And it's one that we need to remember as we rehearse all of the things that he has done for us as well.